The drums of war are beating louder in the Middle East, and the world is turning its gaze toward a narrow strip of water known as the Strait of Hormuz. Often described as the world's most important oil artery, this passage is becoming a central theater for geopolitical friction. As tensions between major powers and regional actors escalate, the fear of a global conflict, World War III, no longer feels like a distant hypothetical. Today, we examine why this specific waterway is the most dangerous flashpoint on the planet, and what happens if the flow of energy stops. To understand the stakes, we must look at the numbers. The Strait of Hormuz handles roughly 20 to 30% of the world's total consumption of oil. But it isn't just about crude. It is also a vital corridor for liquefied natural gas, particularly from Qatar. If this passage were to be blocked, the global economy would face an immediate and catastrophic supply shock. Energy experts warn that even a temporary closure could send oil prices soaring past historical records, impacting everything from gas stations in the US to factories in Europe and Asia. Fear of a wider conflict has been fueled by a series of recent incidents, from the seizure of commercial vessels like the MSC Ares to drone strikes and mine deployments. The shadow war is moving into the light. These actions are often seen as signals of intent, a demonstration of the ability to paralyze global trade at a moment's notice. Each seizure or harassment of a tanker forces insurance rates to spike and pushes international naval forces to increase their presence, creating a feedback loop of militarization in these crowded waters.
For Iran, the Strait of Hormuz is more than a geographic feature. It is a strategic trump card. The Iranian leadership has frequently stated that if they are prevented from exporting their own oil due to sanctions, they have the capability to ensure no one else can either. Their Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy operates a fleet of fast attack craft, submarines, and anti-ship missiles stationed along the coast. This asymmetrical capability allows a relatively smaller military power to hold the global economy hostage, creating a high-stakes standoff with the West.
What happens if the off switch is flipped? Economists predict that oil prices could instantly jump by $30 to $50 per barrel, potentially crossing the $150 mark. This would lead to a global recession, as transportation costs for all goods would skyrocket. Countries heavily reliant on these imports, like Japan and South Korea, would see their industrial output crater. The inflationary pressure would be unlike anything seen in decades, forcing central banks into impossible choices and potentially sparking civil unrest in vulnerable nations.
The international community hasn't sat idly by. Led by the United States Fifth Fleet, a coalition of nations maintains a constant presence to ensure freedom of navigation. Operations such as Prosperity Guardian and other task forces involve dozens of warships from over 10 nations. Their mission is to deter aggression and escort commercial vessels. However, this dense concentration of warships from opposing sides increases the risk of an accidental collision or a misinterested gesture that could ignite a full-scale military engagement.
How does a regional choke point lead to a world war? The answer lies in the web of alliances. A direct strike on a U.S. naval vessel or a total blockade would likely trigger a massive kinetic response. This could draw in regional allies like Israel and Saudi Arabia on one side, and potentially Russia or China, who rely heavily on Middle Eastern oil, on the other, if they feel their national interests are being strangled. The transition from a local skirmish to a global conflagration is a terrifyingly short path when the world's energy lifeline is at stake. The Strait of Hormuz remains a powder keg. While diplomacy continues behind the scenes to prevent a total shutdown, the margin for error is razor thin. As we look forward, the stability of the global economy and the avoidance of a third world war depend on the restraint of the actors involved in this 21-mile wide stretch of water. For now, the world waits and watches, hoping that the next headline from the strait is one of de-escalation rather than disaster. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into one of the world's most critical flashpoints.